guys, it's Ariana. Welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, we're going to be reading some more scary stories. So I'm going to be reading the third and fourth part of the My Parents Told Me Not to Follow the Light in the Water story because you guys really liked it yesterday and I'm curious to know what happens. So like I said in the last video, there is a trigger warning for mention of death. This story does take a really strange direction and I'm excited to see what happens because I have not read the third or fourth part yet, so I'm hoping it's appropriate for YouTube. But without rambling too much, let's jump into the story because I'm really excited to see how this goes. As per usual, I have my wicked candle in here making the whole room smell like caramel apples, and I have these stories pulled up and ready to go on my phone, so let's jump into it. So like I said, this is from the No Sleep section. It is from the Reddit author Cjades. If you haven't already watched the first and second part of this story, I will link it up in the eye so you guys can go watch that one first, or else this really won't make any sense. But this is the second part of this story, and let's jump into it. It was nightfall again, the clock was at midnight, and the noise from the rest of the house had died down. I hadn't eaten since the incident that morning. I don't know if I was forgotten about or if my mother was particularly busy, but it didn't seem like a good time to push the issue. I was starving though. I told myself that I was going to go to the ocean, but I was terribly nervous. I kept thinking about what my mom did to that other kid during the day, and I didn't want the same fate. I held my pen that I planned to use to unlock the door and sat on my bed. Every time I tried to get down from the bed, I started shaking, and I had to get back on the bed. Something came through the air then, an odor that I could taste in my throat, that pulled me close. It smelled like brownies my grandfather made when I was a kid, filled with chocolate and bits of macadamia. I knew the brownies must be crusted and cracked on the outside with a soft and heavenly center. I knew where the brownies were coming from too. It was the ocean. Maybe it was the sea witch calling for me? Somehow with the strength and desire, I found the resolve to get off my bed and walk to the door. I took the pen from outside of its plastic casing and stuck it into the pinhole. I wiggled while my other hand worked the doorknob. After a few moments, I could hear a small pop, and the door had give. Now, the dangerous part had begun. The lights were off, and I had switched the light off to my bedroom so that I was in total darkness, save for the silver moonlight in the kitchen. I waited a moment for my eyes to adjust, but still could hardly hear a thing. I made my first step into the hallway and shut the door behind me. The door softly thudded when it met the frame and her chunk noise as the metal bits inside aligned. It was quiet, but every sound I made sounded like a firecracker. Second step into the hallway. I looked to the floor and then back at the hallway in front of me, and then behind me, just to be sure. My heart was racing. My arms vibrated. I breathed as deeply as I could. I'd have gone back, but that smell, those delicious brownies. I'd give anything to taste one of my grandfather's delicious brownies, so I had to step forward. I just kept picturing an enormous plate full of them and my grandfather standing over me, wearing an old t-shirt and smiling at me. My grandfather would always ask, "There's an extra special ingredient in each brownies that makes it taste so good. Do you know what it is?" "It's love," I would always reply, and then give my grandfather a giant hug. I missed my grandfather, and I still miss him now, the man that I remember him as. A third step into the hallway. I couldn't turn back now. I was next to my parents' door. A light flicked on and glowed from underneath the door. I froze. I thought it was all over. I was going to get stabbed, and my parents were going to hide my body. Maybe in the attic? Maybe in that hollow? I didn't want to die. I wanted brownies. I ran. I ran as fast as I could through the hallway to the door that led to the bower of the trees and the beach with its powdery sand. My heart was a rocking beating against my sternum. I fell onto my knees and I threw up into the sand. I hoped that no one had seen me. I hoped that someone had just gone up to go to the bathroom or get something out of the kitchen. I collapsed and I rolled onto the sand. The smell of my vomit permeated the air, but of course, there was something else. The sweet smell of the brownies. And I could see that golden light again, dancing, calling me from the water. I walked toward the ocean, and the closer I got to the water, the more I could smell those brownies. After just a few steps, I couldn't smell my vomit anymore, just the brownies. And the brighter that light got, and the more beautiful it became. It was stunning and warm. It was like there was a kitchen just underneath the waves. And my grandfather was down there, just waiting to welcome me with one of his enormous hugs. I stood at the water, and the glowing light glided toward the shore like a will-o' of the wisps, until I could see what was glowing. It was a squid, about the size of my head, spotted like a leopard. It glowed brightly, as if someone had stuck an incandescent bulb onto it. A voice emanated from it, and from somewhere in the air Jeremy. Its voice was warm and aged. It sounded like my grandfather, but I didn't want to believe it. Not just yet. Jeremy, you can't breathe underwater. I know, honestly, I hadn't really thought about that. I guess I figured I'd just try to hold my breath for a really long time. I'd taken swimming lessons. I could hold my breath for a whole 30 seconds if I really focused. I was sure I could go a solid 45. You must eat the sand, Jeremy. It will give you the power to breathe underwater. I didn't want to eat sand. I stared down at the squid with its big eyes staring at me, and the water lapping at its tentacles. Jeremy, trust me, the sand tastes like sugar, the squid promised. I knelt and shoveled the sand into my mouth. If there was anyone I could trust, it was a magic squid that sounded like my grandfather. It did kind of taste like sugar, delicious powdered sugar, and I shoveled more into my mouth. It felt like someone was tickling my brain. I don't know how bad I needed that feeling. I wanted that feeling forever, and I knew then that I might do anything to get it. That's enough, Jeremy. You can have plenty of time in the water, and you need to save stomach room for the delicious brownies I've made. I ran into the water and I dove in as soon as I could. My new glowing friend led the way down, and we swam deep under the water. I saw my grandfather's body, his mouth hanging open, fish nibbling on his corpse. His eyes said nothing. We stopped and looked at him for a while. I think the squid was paying its respects. That's what I told myself anyway. We swam out further and the sea level dropped. It was pitch black, save for the glow that emanated from my friend. What's your name? I asked the squid. My name is Peter because I stand at the gate, the squid said proudly. Soon enough, we hit the bottom of the ocean. I walked on the sand and Peter floated near my head. I kept walking forward, trusting that Peter knew exactly where we were going. Then I heard something in the distance. It sounded strange. It sounded like laughter. Peter hovered and looked at me with those enormous pupils of his. His head looked like it had the wings to keep him afloat. Did you hear that? I whispered. I heard it. Jeremy, stay absolutely still and do not make a noise. The voice sounded as if it was in my head, as much as it was in the ocean. I heard the laughter again, but I stayed quiet. I tried to quiet the beating of my heart, but it wouldn't slow. I could hear it as loud as I could hear the door earlier that night. I just wanted it to go away. I wanted to eat those brownies. I wanted my grandfather to be with me again. I wanted off this island. It was a fury of emotions that I kept buried deep as I could from fear, then something I couldn't hide the pain. A sharp pain in my foot. I had irritated a stingray and it pierced into my skin. Its venom coursing through me and I screamed. I couldn't help it. Then the laughter stopped and I could hear a rushing noise. A small girl stood in front of us with a little smile on her face. She was wearing a white dress and yellow shorts. She was barefoot and her skin looked soft. I noticed that her nails were long too and that they hadn't been cut in weeks. Her hair was long. It must not have been cut in months, maybe years. Before I could ask any questions, her mouth opened and a serpent wriggled out of her mouth. It had a cobra's head and a weird tint. It came at me. I could see yellow venom flowing from its fangs. I moved to the left and the serpent flew past me and snapped its mouth shut. I was terrified and I was in terrible pain. Grab it by the head and bite it, Peter yelled. The serpent came at me again and I grabbed it in the middle. It whipped around to bite me and I bit onto its neck as hard as I could. I dug my teeth in and it tasted like rubber and metal. Its head fell to the ground and I started spinning. The girl was now lying on the floor, the current picking up her body as it slid across the sand. I watched it until it was out of sight. These had better be the best damn brownies I've had in my long 9 years. And that's how the first part ended. Let's move on to the fourth part. That part of the story was just really strange. Now they're underwater. I'm so confused what is going on in this story, but I'm so invested. I want to know what's happening. I hope you guys are enjoying it. We now came upon a house. Well, generously a house. It was a shelter with a roof and a single broken window. The structure was embellished with bits of garbage and plastic, like someone in a state of absolute miserable. The ground was scrim, covered with yet more plastic and bits of broken glass. Watch where you step, Peter offered. What is this place? It's where the sea witch lives. I looked down at a crab struggling to find its way out of a bottle. I watched as the plastic bag with the words "thank you" written several times as it floated by. Truth be told, my parents were wealthy, so I'd never seen anything like this. I lived on an island. It's not as if there were homeless people or drifters loitering around. I'm not even sure I understood what it was that bothered me at this time except for the rank scent of sulfur. Go on, walk to the door, and give it a good knock. I don't want to meet the sea witch. She'll tear my skin and eat my bones. No, don't worry about that. She doesn't eat children from the land. But she does eat children? Well, if you want to call it that, look, you probably don't want to know. I was feeling a bit braver now, and I said I wanted to know. Okay, there are her kids. She spawns them and then eats them as soon as they come out of her. I had no idea what any of that meant, but I didn't want to seem dumb to my magic squid friend, so I nodded and I walked to the door. Still not entirely comfortable, and I knocked. There was no answer, so I knocked again. He convorted in the water waiting for the sea witch to appear. The door swung open, and I jumped back. There was a woman at the door. She was thin and wore a large shirt with a stain on it, just like the one my father had given me for bedtime. Her hair was tangled, her eyes were sunken in, and she had crooked lines that lined her face. She started coughing, and green phlegm floated in the water. Her arms were covered in scabs, some intact, some broken. She had a voice like rustling packing peanuts. "What do you want, and who are you?" the woman asked. "Are you the sea witch?" I asked in return. "Sea witch?" She laughed and coughed again. "Look, you little shit, I hear all this talk about a goddamn sea witch, sailors above the water singing shanties about a fucking sea witch. I'm a perfectly normal looking woman who just happens to live underwater. Maybe I don't look the best, but it's a recession. Nobody looks good right now. Am I a witch? After I killed the seacorn's horn, I've been grinding it up and using the leftovers for spells. And also, I don't tell anyone this just for fun." I nodded, though I really wanted to leave. Finally, Peter spoke up. "Cheryl, we're here about the brownies, the delicious brownies that you made for the guest of honor." "Oh, I didn't even see you there, Peter. You have no idea the kind of trouble you've gotten yourself into." She started mumbling some incoherent stuff. Peter declined to answer, and I broke in and said, "My name is Jeremy. Look, I've got brownies. I'm magic, so yeah, you can come inside and I'll give you some." We walked inside. The walls were covered in flanking paint, barely hanging onto the dilapidated frame. Plastic chairs, the color ones you see in schoolrooms, colistered one of those horrible tables you see at food drives. The legs of everything were dug into the dirt scrim. There was no real floor, save for a tattered welcome mat tossed to the wall. But in the center, there were these brownies. They smelled like chocolate and macadamia. They smelled like love. All of my troubles melted in the scent, wafting away in the current, carried on past the ocean and into the sky, never to burden me again. I couldn't smell the sulfur anymore. The building was cathedral, a beautiful vision, and the sea witch, its guardian. "Go on, eat the brownies," Cheryl motioned toward the platter. I grabbed one. It immediately had a sporific effect. The flecks of paint swimming from the walls looked like it was there waving, kindly encouraging an experience I was having. I savored every chew, every crunch, every bit of chocolatey ambrosia. I was in seventh heaven. I was in a cloud, floating on cashmere cloud. Cheryl began to groan. I drew my attention to her. "What's going on?" She responded that she needed to eat too, and here comes another one. With that, effluent ejected from below her dress, and out dropped an infant, its legs bending and its head hitting the ground as it crumpled to the floor. It tossed back to and fro, and its hands crunched and its little baby face screaming. Its face was red, and it shook with a little might it could muster. Cheryl bent down and picked up the child by its arm and tossed it onto the table. She buried her face into the open skull and devoured its contents. She laughed. It was horrible and sickening. This is all I could take. I fell to the floor, and when I woke up again, Peter said that he had some news for me. And that's how they ended that story. So that took a really weird turn, and I'm really confused as to what is happening in this story. This is a very, very strange story. I thought we were gonna get more of what was going on with his mom and what is going on in the attic and stuff, but this is all about like being underwater and a sea witch, and the sea witch eats children. I'm just very confused. This is a very, very strange story. Definitely wasn't so much paranormal as it was magical. So let me know in the comments down below if you guys are interested in more updates on the story, because this is the last update that I have currently. If you guys aren't interested in the story, please let me know and I will just move on. But this is a very, very weird story, and I'm pretty invested in figuring out what's going to happen next. But I can definitely understand if you guys are not interested in further updates, as this isn't very paranormal. This is more like magical. But maybe you guys are interested in magical fantasy stories too. But this is definitely a little bit different than what I usually read on my channel, and this is very strange. I don't really like reading things where it's like children are getting eaten or like mentions of death. So let me know in the comments down below if you guys are actually interested in me continuing this series, because this series took a very strange turn. But thank you so much again to the author for allowing me to read the story. The story is very weird, very strange, but very well written. If you guys made it to the end of the video, please leave me your favorite sea emoji, because we are now in the ocean and this is very strange. You can also leave me your favorite magical emojis, so like a wand or something. Anything you guys want to leave down below, so let me know that you guys got to the end of the video will help. If you guys did enjoy this video, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below for more content like this, and I will see you guys at the next video.